Hello, welcome to day 7. Building a body of work is a really interesting thing to play with, because building a body of work and saying, this is what I do, almost like handing over a hamper and saying, this is what I've done, and this is how it started, and this is what it is now, and this is what it is in the middle, has been really great for building trust and building credibility. Because one thing that I find is that people don't necessarily want I often think about X Factor, where people wander in and they're like, I've got this dream, Simon. And he's like, great. You can see it in his eyes, like, great, but can you sing? Can you sing? Can you do the job? Are you going to show up every week? Have you got good habits? Have you got good discipline? Are you going to flake on me? Are you going to say that you don't fancy it? Are you going to say that you're all out, I'm into it and now I'm not, and I'm chopping and changing? And I know that there are other external factors sometimes that we have to consider, where people can change and pivot, and we must be allowed to do that as well. But there is something in this market when there is so much to choose from. And this was one really great thing that happened at my drama school, actually, is that they made such a focus on discipline, on things like making sure you've learned your lines, of making sure that you're signed in 10 minutes before your first lesson. And because they didn't want you could lose a job if you were late, or you just become like one of these flaky actors who's like, they were here and now they've sort of disappeared. They didn't want to produce those kind of actors. And I think having that uniformity to whatever it is that you're building, that sense of recognizing you, your flavor, what you're all about. And I think that's more to do with your personal brand as well. So on the podcast over the years, I've spoken about lots of different things: money, building your personal brand, visibility, speaking, interviewing people. I've spoken about writing a book, all sorts of things. But ultimately, what is underneath that is the same sort of flavor. So I really try to maintain who I am throughout, rather than like putting on a weird accent one day or being super corporate one day. It's like, oh, that doesn't sound like Nicky. Like, building those consistencies within your personal brand have been great. Also recognizing what you've built so far in terms of building opportunities. So if you have if you're pitching, for example, and you want to write an article and you've never been paid to write an article before, can you create your body of work and show what you can do? As in, how can you make those 5 articles that maybe you've written for pleasure or for business or for your own blog? How can you make them look like a body of work, so they're ready, so they're good to be accepted, so it builds that credibility, that trust, that know, like, and trust factor. I know that having this podcast has opened doors. It's almost given that sense of like, well, if she can do that, yeah, totally. Like, we'll just book her, or yeah, we'll pay you what you want to be paid. And yeah, it's a really interesting one. Also, building a body of work requires you to bet on yourself, requires you to be consistent. And I'm saying consistent, not perfect, because if we go for perfection, sometimes it's so overwhelming and that we just will never do it. So consistency, regularity. You can have days off. And especially if you're going to be doing something for a long period of time, I think we can all have a bit of flexibility with ourselves too.